I think I was 15, perhaps 16, but it was 1974. A friend of mine, still a great friend, his uncle used to bring him in to see an art movie every Friday night. I wasn't aware of such a thing. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know there was a cinema in Dublin City where you could go to see films with subtitles. And his uncle wasn't well one Friday, and Paul, my friend, said, would I come in instead? So it was an adventure, going in Friday night, at my age, going into the city centre, just the two of us on the bus. And then we went to this cinema, and I watched Amarcord, Fellini's movie. I didn't know who Fellini was. I knew nothing about Italian cinema, but it was the most extraordinary thing I had ever seen in my life, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, certainly in terms of film or TV or something like that. But most extraordinary visual and probably narrative experience I'd ever had in my life, and really remains that way. It was just incredible. Growing up in what was considered and what really was a very strictly Catholic country, it no longer is really, but at the time it was brilliant to see Catholicism in a way ridiculed, and it was also the way everything was beautiful and grotesque at the same time, and it was just so funny the way sex was presented as, you know, mad and hilarious and absurd instead of sinful, and the women were extraordinary, literally larger than life. There's a tobacconist who almost smothers the young central character with her colossal breasts, and that's a brilliant thing for a 16-year-old to see. It was hilariously funny and surrounded by people in stitches laughing. It was a great antidote to the way life was being presented in the Christian Brothers high school that myself and Paul went to. The music was extraordinary, everything about it, and the way it was told. Years and years later, when I started writing myself, Amarcord was there nudging me, at the back of my head, nudging me. And several of my novels take place in a year of a character's life, you know. Amarcord is a year, spring to spring. And I always thought that was great. There was no story per se. It was just a year full of visual moments and narrative moments and the family, you know, just a slightly distorted version of the average family. And that distortion made it just wonderful and somehow even more human. And the parents screaming at each other all the time, roaring at each other. And then when the father has been basically tortured by fascists, this is the 1930s, and he comes home humiliated, that he's in a bath being cleaned, and it's the mother who's cleaning him. Brilliantly tender moment. And again, you just feel it's the stuff of life, you know. I remember coming from this film. I suppose at that age you're hearing music that will never, you know, nothing you hear ever again will mean quite as much to you as it does when you're 16, 17 or thereabouts. But having watched that film at a time when there was a lot of good movies, you know, there were a lot of good movies in my teenage years, you know, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Dog Day Afternoon, movies that had a big impact, you know, in terms of the story, in terms of the way the story was told, the morality of it all. And but Amarcord was just out on its own, really. You know, I could never really pin it down in a few words and say what was great about Amarcord, but it was the biggest cultural moment of my life, really.